Hello, I'm Bernard Keevy. Welcome to my short session on how you can set the best prices possible for your product or service. Now, I know from experience, this really is a sort of vexed area, and a lot of business owners haven't really got much clue as to how to go about it. So I'll try and offer you some guidelines, which I think will help. I think you need to understand some basic concepts. Now, apologies for anyone who's done business studies or economics in the past, but I think it really does apply to the real world. So this picture or diagram I've got here, what this is basically saying is that this has got pounds on this side and this has got volume of output and sales along here. And generally for most businesses, virtually all businesses really, the more you can produce, the lower your unit costs become. The reason being that you can spread your overheads, your fixed costs more thinly, you can take advantage of economies of scale, you can probably do bulk deals for supplies, you can work more efficiently, etc., etc. Until you get to a certain point here, which is your capacity level. And what happens here is you start to have to employ extra staff, pay them overtime. You may even have to have bigger machinery. You may have to move premises. So eventually your costs start to rise. And here, this is where you have to maybe move into a new sort of setup altogether. But up until that point, generally, the more you can produce and sell, the lower your unit costs are going to be, which is fine. But obviously you've got to be able to sell that output. Now, the other thing that's important is that virtually always, although not completely the case, but virtually always, if you charge a lower price, you'll be able to sell more. And if you raise your prices, you'll probably end up selling less. So this is saying this is what your price is here, and this is how much you can sell. Where many small businesses end up is somewhere around about here. And it's not precise, you can work this out graphically, etc., but this is just like conceptual, so just see if you can follow this. Generally where people end up is somewhere where they're making a bit of a profit on everything they sell, but not much. And what's happening is that the market's very competitive and they've got competitors who are competing with them, and everyone's sort of worried about price and they're competing on price. And so you're around about this point here, and typically business owners will say to me, well, I can't really put my prices up, because if I put my prices up, I'll lose business to my competitors. But the thing is, you don't know. This thing's called a demand curve, and in theory, it tells you how much you can sell for any price you charge. But the trouble is, you don't know it. It could look like that, the green one I've drawn. It could be like that. It could be like that. Well, if you don't know what it looks like, then you're taking a stab in the dark if you raise your prices a bit, because you might sell a lot less, you might sell a bit less. So somewhere there's a true figure. Now, how can you find out what it really looks like? Well, you can try asking people, but the thing is, what are they going to tell you? If you say to someone, if I put my prices up 10%, would you buy as much off me as you buy now, or would it go down slightly? Well, people are going to say, I'd stop buying from you. So you can't really believe that. So that's a difficult one. You can't really try charging all the different possible prices, because how would you do that? And anyway, even if you did, by the time you change your prices, you still won't know for a fact whether putting your prices up or down would give you that volume of business again, because market conditions can change. So you really don't know this information. What you do know is that you're in a position where if you try and lower your prices, then you might get more volume. But the problem is you're generally in a position here where you're not making much profit anyway. So if you lower your prices, you might get more volume, but you'll probably start to lose money. And that's where this worked example up here comes in, because let's just take an example where if your unit costs are £60 and you're selling at a price of £100, that means that on everything you sell, you're making a gross profit of £40. Now, if you lower your price by, say, £10 here to try and capture market share, well, the first thing you've got to be aware of is that what's to stop your competitors also lowering their price? You trigger off a price war, and then no one's any better off. But even if that doesn't happen, you lower your prices by 10%, well, you're now charging £90 instead of 100. It's still costing you £60. You're not making £40 profit on everything you sell anymore. You're now only making £30 profit. So if you're here and you lower your prices by £10, are you going to capture 25% more business from the market? Because if you're not, you're going to lose money. And that's basically where most business owners who sort of try discounts, etc., end up. They don't realize that a 10% reduction in price often results in a 25% reduction in their margin. So what you really want to do is, from that position there, you want to be able to put your prices up. And if you raise your prices, you want to not lose much volume. So you want your demand to look a bit like that. Well, what if you raised your prices and marketed your business better and got your message across better, that what you provide is better than the competitors? And what if you improve your business to make what you provide better than the competitors? Well, then wouldn't you be able to put your prices up without losing much market share? And in fact, if you really get your act together and work on what we call the market dominating position, and then communicate that more effectively to your market, you'd actually end up, instead of having your demand curve looking something like that, it might look something like that, which basically means you're going to be making a lot more profit where you are now, because you can charge a lot more now without having to put your prices up. And if you do decide you put your prices up even more, then you're not going to lose anywhere near as much volume as you might do if you're down here. So the secret is that you need to have a market dominating position. You need to be seen as the expert in your marketplace, which means you need a clearly defined target market. You need to know exactly what motivates that ideal target customer of yours to buy, and you need to give them more and more of that by improving what we call your market dominating position. And then you need to do, so that's the good bit to say, if you remember from yesterday, the having something good to say, and the ideal target customer is the right person to say it to. And then you need to get your message across better than the others do about how you've got this something good to say, which means you need to market effectively by following what we call the conversion equation, and you need to market effectively as well by following buyers on their buyer's journey by means of a drip campaign, which we've also spoken about before. So the secret is not to put your prices down, because that will hit your margins, and generally you won't get enough extra business to justify it, particularly if your competitors respond by also lowering their prices and triggering off a price war. You really want to be able to put your prices up, and if you really want to be putting your prices up without risking a disproportionate amount of business, then you need to work on what we call business fundamentals. So having a market dominating position which clearly gives your ideal customers and clients exactly what they're looking for to solve the issue or concern they've got, so it's targeted on them, which means you can stand out as the business, as the expert or the person to go to in that particular target market, which means you can dominate your market. And then you need to communicate this market dominating position by following what we call the conversion equation, so marketing it effectively and marketing it repeatedly, which goes back to yesterday of having something good to say, saying it to the right people, saying it well, and saying it often. And if you do that properly, then you can be, instead of there, you can be a demand looking like that, which means you can charge more without losing business, and you can put your prices up even more without losing very much business either. And that's basically the secret. So where a lot of businesses currently set their prices based on what it cost plus a bit, or what their competitors are charging, or on an hourly rate, none of which will get you very far. If you follow a proper strategic marketing approach, you can actually set prices and actually make decent profits for your business. And that's basically the secret. So I hope you found that interesting. I hope you found that useful. Kevin McLaughlin, who I haven't seen for years. How are you, Kevin? I was talking about you the other night. I went to school with Kevin. And I hope you found that really interesting, really useful. And thank you for listening. Thanks very much.